sick of it. What's going on, everybody? Welcome to the Awesemo.com NFL Strategy Show. I'm back with you so soon for the first look edition, Tuesday, December 8th, 2020. We're ready to get things going here. I'm Dave Loughran. With me, Ben Rasa, as I like to call him. I've recently termed him the jack of all trades. You know why? Because the guy does golf. The guy does UFC. He doesn't yet, but I'm sure he will. Horse racing, croquet, basketball, college football, whatever, everything. But I should be calling Sal Vetri something similar. Sal Vetri DFS. Check him out at Sal Vetri DFS, both on the YouTubes and on Twitter. Ben is at JazzRez DFS, by the way. But Sal, you've got your hand. You got your hand in a few pies, as they say. Is that what they say? You get your hand in a few pies.
Yeah, and a few cookie jars I think you're looking for there. But they could be pies in the cookie jars.
No. The cookie jar is doing something you're not supposed to do.
Oh, okay, right? Okay, all right. So hands in a few pies. I never heard it, but I'll take it. Yeah,
Fingers in a few pies? Ben, what is it?
I don't know where this is going.
I have absolutely no idea what you're talking about.
Okay, well, sorry. You got
fingers in a few pies.
You've got a few irons in the fire. How about that?
There it is. Yeah, I mean, NFL, NBA starting soon. That's just a totally different beast daily. It's probably going to be crazy with all the COVID stuff. I would like to do more, but just being one person, I'm going to last year I got so burnt out. I would like to do, I watched probably UFC almost more than anything else, but it's just putting an extra sport in there is going to be overboard at that point.
By the way, go on to Google, and the term is have fingers in many pies. Told you.
There you go.
It's a real deal, man.
Infidelity
stuff.
Incognito browsing for those type of searches, I assume.
Oh man. All right, guys, we're happy to have you with us. This is always a fun show to do, taking a first look at the slate, like a cursory look really, and seeing what pops off the page. We don't have ownership yet. We don't have projections yet. We don't have any of that top stacks yet. So, for those of us that just like to get started earlier in the week, start to build some lineups, it's fun to do so. And we're glad to have everybody here. So hit that thumbs up if you haven't done so yet, and subscribe if you think we've helped you along the way. If you think at some point in time, maybe we've helped you win some money, we've helped improve or change your thought process as it relates to how you play the game, or you just like what we do and you want to help support us here, many different reasons to hit that subscribe, thumbs up, and help support Awesemo and the channel as we make our quest to get to 50,000 subscribers. All right. Well, and by the way, all of our shows available in podcast form. Go to any podcast platform, check them out. If you jump into this one late and the show's almost over, just go back or wait till it's over and check it out from the beginning. You can do whatever you want. All right, guys, let's jump into it. Sal, I'll start with you. We're going quarterback, running back, wide receiver, and then tight end defense in the same pretty much thing because there's not a lot to talk about there. And then we'll give our favorite defense under 2,800 at the end of the show. Kick it off at the quarterback position. Patrick Mahomes, the highest priced guy here on DraftKings, 8,100. He has now thrown 40 plus times in 5 straight games. I'd say that is relevant information. Russell Wilson against the Jets, who got dog walked by Derek Carr and Darren Waller the other day. Deshaun Watson against the Bears. Aaron Rodgers against the Detroit Lions. And the last guy, fifth and final player north of 7K, is Kyler Murray against the New York Giants. Safe to say he was a lot of the sharps and the analysts and the touts contrarian pick last week and let a lot of people down.
Yeah, let a lot of people down. And you got 13 games in the slate this week, which is the first time we've had that since week 2, week 3. So
yeah, I hate it.
You just have a lot. Yeah, it's a lot overwhelming. And week 6 or week 17, you can have all 16 games. But it's interesting because you have just so much here. But I mean, unfortunately, out of all these studs that are on the slate, we don't get Baker Mayfield. I mean, I was expecting to see some $7,500 pricing up here,
right.
But yeah, but no, at this point, I was going to lead it off with Mahomes at the top, mentioning how much he's throwing at this point. There was first quarter of the season, there was some questions about how much they're starting to run the ball. And now they're just getting completely away from that over the last month. Like you said, throwing 40 plus times, averaging 318 passing yards per game. But you have a lot of other options here. The team total is still nice, though, at 28 in this one. I assume most of that gets there on the air, not throwing any interceptions. So, yeah, Mahomes up top is fine, but there's a lot of things here that you can look at. You have a couple other 30 implied totals. I assume that on a 13 game slate, like ownership, high quarterbacks, sometimes it hits 10%. Doesn't really matter if you're full on stacking it. So I think Rodgers is going to end up being popular, but at $7,500, just right away looks like the best option. 31 implied team total at this point, and he's also a floor of last week, basically a floor game at like 23.5 fantasy points.
Yeah, that's a very good point. Rodgers at this stage of the game, his floor is around 23, right? He's had 2 games with less than 23 fantasy points. One was 19, the other was 5 against Tampa Bay. That was dreadful. But aside from that, he's just been remarkably consistent along with Devontae Adams, which makes for such an easy pairing. If you're playing one and Rodgers, you're likely always going to play Devontae Adams. Ben, at the top of the position, we've got 5 of these guys. How do we go?
Yeah, I mean, Rodgers has thrown, we talked about this last week and it continued, double-digit touchdowns in every game but one. He's as safe as they come. The matchup against Detroit is nothing to worry about. So he would be probably, I mean, it's very early, but if I was thinking like cash, that's probably where I would go if you wanted stability. It's weird because, yeah, I mean, Mahomes obviously is always going to be in play, but Miami's defense is much stronger than he's seen in recent weeks. Russell Wilson has certainly regressed. Gets the Jets at home, though, in a get-right spot. They cannot afford to keep dropping games like this. So he's appealing. And then, obviously, Kyler, I think it's pretty safe to say that something is wrong. Again, 5 rushing attempts for the 3rd straight game.
Yeah.
He had double-digit carries in 4 straight before that. So it's basically been cut in half, and that's where all the upside is gone.
What is your impression of Russell Wilson right now? Outside, like, I'll say this. I think the Giants defense is formidable now, and we need to at least begin to respect them. And I think Washington's defense, as we've seen, is respectable from the defensive line to the pass rushers to the secondary. I think they've made a case that they're good defensively. I mentioned that because they came off of a very ugly loss to the Giants in Seattle, where they scored 12 points. They also struggled against the Eagles team, despite getting that win with a defensive touchdown as well. Oh, no, maybe they didn't. Anyway, what do you make of Russell Wilson right now? Because this is such a good matchup. It's
a great matchup. And yeah, obviously he's regressed, but he's rushing upside is still there. The attempts are still there. I'm not going to say it's solely due to this because it's not, but I will say Seattle's made strides defensively in itself. And I actually think that has hurt Russ because earlier in the year, it was like, all right, they need to score 40 points because their defense can't stop anybody. Lately, their defense has kept them in games and the offense has stalled. So I don't know exactly what to attribute it, but at home against the Jets, I mean, you can't get it done here. You're not going to find a better matchup for Russ. And it's hard to say I'm worried about him. He's just still so consistent.
By the way, Ben, Spencer S says happy birthday.
Yes. Every week, man. I'm getting old.
You're what, 180 by now?
Seriously.
Sal, the upper middle tier, because the 68, 6,700, that's still not even mid-tier yet. We've got a few guys that are lower, but I guess we could consider that given the difference now with Mahomes and Wilson and Watson all up there quite a bit. Brady against Minnesota, coming off of a big game in that loss. The thing is, if you watched him, you're like, dude, he looks pretty washed. Or as they like to say, dust. I've noticed that's the new term for the young fellas, right? You noticed that? I know I'm older than you guys, but still, it's like, oh, he's dust, which I don't mind. Maybe I'll embrace it. But he still had a big game, passed for 345 yards and 3 touchdowns. He's got Minnesota this week that went into overtime against the Jacksonville Jaguars, who want to lose football games. Then you've got Justin Herbert with the most brutal game I've ever seen from a team in a long time. I don't know how Anthony Lynn still has himself a coaching job. They've got Atlanta. Ryan Tannehill, Taysom Hill, Kirk Cousins, and Derek Carr round out the 6K. I also assume that Drew Brees could be back this week, so we'll keep that in mind.
Yeah, you get this tier right here where a lot of these guys last week were your top scoring players. A lot of the quote unquote statue quarterbacks. I mean, Tannehill playing from behind, Cousins was up there as well. So it's interesting because they're going to be a little bit more expensive this week. I lean to move towards the top of it. Both Brady and Herbert look good. They are 2 of the highest, if not right now, right up there as the 2 highest in terms of volume quarterbacks. You've only had Brady throwing below 38 attempts once in the last 2 months. You have Herbert coming off of what is now probably back-to-back his 2 worst games on the year. Last week was terrible. I mean, just trying to watch that game, I had probably like 20% Herbert stacks. And it was left and right, just no time for him at all. Like, I think he was pressured on the highest out of any quarterback this entire season. They were making problems everywhere on that offensive line. And that's a concern. But now against Atlanta, I'm not going to be as worried about that. I think it is a nice bounce back spot for arguably the best spot on the slate for a quarterback. I think that Herbert's probably the guy that I choose in that 6K range, upper 6K range. After that, I'm fine to go to Brady. Like, he didn't look good against the Chiefs, but if you're talking about fantasy, just playing from behind, it was fine. He ended up getting like 26, 27 fantasy points, hit 300 yards for the second time in the last 3 games. So I'm fine getting there. And you want to talk about other defenses that are terrible. I mean, Minnesota's secondary has come on the last month or so, but it's still nowhere near a average secondary. It's still bottom half of the league and a lot of efficiency metrics, yards per attempt. So I'll go Herbert and then Brady in that upper range.
Ben, I talked a lot throughout the week about Ryan Tannehill potentially being placed into a spot where they throw a lot, whether they're down or whether they just can't get the run game going. And we saw that come to fruition, right? 389 passing yards, 3 touchdowns. Unfortunately, outside of Corey Davis, A.J. Brown fumbled twice, one of them at the goal line. And who took that in? Michael Pruitt, I think.
Yeah. Yep.
Yeah, Michael Pruitt. And then he got hurt for a little bit. Oh, that sucked. But still, I hate this notion that things have to go a certain way. Therefore, you can only look to this guy because the game script can't change, because it can. And we've seen that happen so many times. Like the whole Derek Carr thing. Oh, Devontae Booker's got to be the guy. There's no way that they have to throw as much as they do. Kansas City did against the Jets. Derek Carr did against the Jets. It happens. That's football. And, that's one thing I hope people appreciate that we do on the show is try to take, different approaches and not just a consensus view of every single guy has to play it out like this, because that's what's happened more times than not on the season.
No doubt. And I mean, it just speaks, the NFL is how many times do we see a 10-point favorite either lose a game or certainly struggle and win late? Those things can change the game streak. Obviously, in this game, there's a better chance that the Titans control it on the ground with Derrick Henry, but there's still plenty of scenarios where they are trailing. I don't think to the extent we saw against Cleveland, but where Tannehill is forced to throw. And when he does have to throw, I think it's pretty clear. The only issue is volume. It's not efficiency. I don't think he can get it done. It's will he have the opportunity? So, of course, that's a red flag, but it's one that you're going to have to embrace. I like him. I like Herbert. Those guys, particularly in that middle 6K range, is, to me, pretty favorable. You save some salary off the top end guys. I don't think you sacrifice that much.
I will ask about Drew Brees, just given the matchup and given the fact that he is expected to return this week. Alvin Kamara. So this is why I'm asking you, and I want actually both of your guys' opinions here, okay? For good reason. So he is potentially going to be ready for this game against the Eagles. Now, I'm not sure if you guys caught this. Actually, that's dumb. Yes, I am sure you guys caught this. You did. Alvin Kamara is $7,100. Okay. $7,100. Mind you, before Drew Brees went down, he was $9,200 in the first game after that Drew Brees wasn't playing. Michael Thomas is $7,100. So Ben, and then you, Sal, is there some justification to saying, well, this is the cheapest we are going to get a Saints stack all damn season, and if Drew Brees plays, I'm going to do it? Or do you get away from it? Or do you just go one piece here or one piece there? Because I think there might be some merit to doing it with how cheap they are.
I get where you're coming from. Obviously, normally that stack can cost upwards of like 25,000 at sometimes. Like it can be ridiculous. I still rather would take a piece. And I think Kamara and Michael Thomas certainly are going to be staples of one-offs. But I just don't know exactly. With 13 games, as Sal brought up, Drew Brees needs to probably do one of his stupid sneaks where he sticks the ball over the goal line. There's just so many other quarterbacks to me that are going to be able to possibly overlap. And you're not getting a massive discount. It's not like he's 5K. If he was 5K or something like that, I may have more interest. But for me, I'll probably take a wait and see and certainly bump up Kamara and or Michael Thomas.
Okay. And I will just say that Darius Slay left that game against your Packers with a knee injury. I forget who else, but they lost another. I think it was who was it? I can't remember who it was, but they lost several people in the secondary that week. So as someone put in chat, Drew Brees is what you'd call dust. Yeah. And so is the Eagles defense. So Sal, your thoughts on the pricing for these Saints this week?
Yeah, I think it's pretty appealing. Like I'm most like in the past weeks when these guys are all expensive, Michael Thomas not playing, there's just nothing to really stack it with. Like
Right.
having your running back as your top stacking priority. Kamara would be the one, him, McCaffrey coming back. So you can actually do this. Eckler back. Those are like the three guys I feel comfortable stacking with the quarterback. Kamara, like a 25% target share with Breeze this year. He has 4 receiving touchdowns in 8 games with Breeze. So that stuff, there's real correlation there and real upside in the passing game, but you just haven't had the ability to stack it all up. Now, if they're all going to be healthy this week, assuming that Breeze might return, they're all favorable pricing. I would assume that I might actually get, instead of normally like 0 to 3% stacks of New Orleans, and really a lot of the year this year 0, I might get like 5 or 6%, which I assume full on game stacking, team stacking, that's going to be above the field. So I think it is pretty beneficial right now, just with Breeze price point at this point, because of what you can do with Thomas being back and Kamara at those price tags.
All right. Yeah, I really like this range from Herbert in a bounce back game to Ryan Tannehill even. And you're going to hear so many people go, yeah, but Derrick Henry kills Jacksonville. They're just going to run. Well, week 2, he didn't, when everyone said that. And Ryan Tannehill ended up going off for a monster game. But yeah, that's a really solid range in that 6K. Ben, is there any value down here below $6,000 that you're willing to look at for week 14?
I mean, there's nothing where I'm super interested. I will say that Trubisky last week got more and more popular as the week went on, and he wasn't great. Obviously, I bet the Bears money line, so you know how frustrated I am, but that's neither here nor there. You get a better matchup in this spot, and I have a feeling ownership will be way down. People were not thrilled with what he did. So given if they say all systems go with him again at home against Houston, who's a disaster in their own right, I don't mind trying it again with Trubisky and running it back.
How about you, Sal? Cheap quarterbacks this week?
Yeah, really not much. I want to try and like Teddy Bridgewater, really tough matchup, top 10 secondary in Denver and top 10 passers to this point. McCaffrey coming back just gives you more options. So I might get there a little bit, just having some flexibility with the stack. Matt Ryan, I'll keep just saying that if you're going to have Julio and Ridley, this was like the first game where Ryan doesn't get you 18 to 20 plus fantasy points at a fair price point, but you have other guys just a little bit more expensive. So not much. We're still waiting on a lot of injury news. Surprised to see Tua still this cheap at 5,400 coming off of almost a 40 attempt game. You're just not getting any of the rushing upside right now. I think that as playing as a 7-point underdog, that might be there a little bit more for him. So he's one of those guys that has the upside we just haven't seen yet, or at least we think he has a ceiling that we haven't seen yet. So he's always sneaky. Usually I get like 1 or 2% of Miami stacks.
We're doing a giveaway at Awesemo_com on Twitter. Be sure to check that out. Who has more passing yards tonight, Lamar Jackson or Andy Dalton? Yeah, you'd think you'd lean Andy Dalton there. Whoever gets that right, you'd be randomly selected to win an Awesemo NFL annual pass. So all of the NFL content will be entirely free for an entire year for you, assuming you win this. Awesemo_com. While you're at it, follow Sal Vetri, Ben Rasa, and myself, Laffy_D. And check out all of our content over at Awesemo.com. We've got a ton, like Awesemo projections, ownership, player projections, top stack tool, the lineup builder, the fantasy cruncher add-on. God, there's so much. The top plays tool, which is, a probabilities tool for the showdown slate. All of the ownership showdown or all the showdown ownership projections. You can get all of our showdown content for less than $4 a week, by the way. So check that out. And that includes rankings for the main slate, the Express top stack tool, Express lineup builder. There's so much included. But if you want Ben's work for PGA and the PGA projections and ownership, UFC, MMA, NASCAR, all of that. NBA is coming up soon. You can do the Awesemo Plus Platinum. You can do it weekly. You can do it monthly. You can do it annually, whatever you want. We got something for anyone's budget. And like I said, even if you're running on a tight budget, less than $4 a week gets you all of the showdown content, which mind you, is huge coming up towards the end of the season. You're going to have Saturday night games. You're going to have a Christmas Day game, which is on Friday. You're going to have several more Thursday night football games. You have a Tuesday night game tonight. And with COVID wreaking havoc on all of these slates, you might see more games pushed to a Monday with a doubleheader, or a Tuesday or a Wednesday again. So it's the best time to get in on that for only $3.95. Go to awesemo.com/join. Check it out. All right, Ben, Dalvin Cook's at the top. He salvaged in overtime, got us where we needed to go, but it looked dicey for a moment there. Christian McCaffrey expected to return. He's got Denver. He's 9,200. And then really the only other guy that's priced up this week north of 7,600 is Derrick Henry against Jacksonville at 8,700. That's really expensive despite the good matchup.
It is. Yeah, I mean, this is the first with Dalvin Cook, first of all. Yes, he's salvaged. He also should have scored multiple times. We fumbled on the 1-inch line and many other stupid things happened. This is the first week, though. Last couple, it's mostly been because of Dalvin Cook. I'm not as interested in the extreme top. I may try to save a couple thousand just because given Tampa's front is as strong as it gets. McCaffrey, I don't love the matchup. And I do think that there's still an unknown about exactly what we see from him. I'm not saying he's going to split time, but I don't know if it'll be 30 touches right out of the gate. You've got Henry priced up, but then you've got Robinson, Kamara, Eckler, that type of range for a couple $1,000s cheaper to me are in much better matchups. So I'm probably going to try to steal some salary at first glance with running back.
Sal, talk to me about the top tier here.
Yeah, I mean, it's similar to last week in terms of there was guys in the 5 and 6K range that you could feel comfortable getting 20 plus touches. Yeah, they don't have like that 40-point ceiling. You just had to avoid that. And you did with Henry in a major way. And Cook doesn't get there with like high 20s in fantasy points. So if you can avoid those performances, the matchups this week for Cook and even McCaffrey can maybe limit that a little bit. Then yeah, you're going to be fine. And this week, not only is it like the 5 and 6K range where there's a couple of decent workload running backs, full guys, 18 plus touches. We also have, like we talked about, Kamara, Eckler, these guys in the 7K range. So I don't think they're as much of a priority, especially if you're trying to build like optimal cash lineups. But when it comes to picking one of them, I think I will go with McCaffrey here. What you're getting right now is just small sample. Everything's so small at this point, but I think it's going to limit ownership. I hope Ian Rappaport tweets on Sunday morning that he's not going to be the workhorse again. So it cuts that ownership to like 8% again. But yeah, 26 opportunities in his 3 games. The floor that you're getting on him is going to be immense at this point. I think that you're probably looking at like 20 fantasy point type floor based on the usage that they have in the offense. And the first week back, they just give him 10 targets. So I'm fine with McCaffrey at 9,200. I don't think you have to go there, but if I had to pick one, I'll take his ceiling and floor combination.
So the fact that, and I think all of us talked about this, how insane it was that week leading up to this. The fact that Christian McCaffrey in many large field tournaments was single digit ownership at 8,500, just because there was some rumor that he wasn't going to get as much work, even though we all know that this is the most talented back in the entire league. Like even at 9,200, what do you think a healthy Christian McCaffrey should be priced at in this matchup? Is this appropriate, or if you were setting salaries, would you change it?
If we didn't have any, he's coming off the bye, so I don't think he's going to be, I think he's fully healthy, but if we didn't have any uncertainty about he's only played 3 games, like if he had played 10 games to this point this season, I mean, I think, yeah, like 9,500 to 10,000 like he usually was. So I think you're getting appropriate to slightly underpriced McCaffrey here. And you have other guys around him that are in that range. So it's not like Dalvin Cook's 8,000 that it's like, all right, we'll pivot down. It's a pretty significant jump. Like if Drew Brees doesn't play, then it starts to become pretty interesting to where, okay, you don't have like a smash playing Kamara down there to just jump to. You can pay up and probably have close to single digit ownership, maybe 15% on McCaffrey when he's centered around Cook and Henry up there.
Ben, Aaron Jones had 130 rushing yards in that last game against the Eagles, but before the 77-yard run, he had like 14 for 53 or something. And the Eagles locked him up all game until, like I said, I've been saying this a million times. Sorry to beat a dead horse, but the Eagles break down late in the game and they gave up a 77-yard touchdown run. We see it so often. Aside from that, he was quiet. He had 15 carries in a game that they led throughout, which to me, I wish he had more. But he's $7,600 against Green Bay. Are you going back to the well here? Or can we go to someone like James Robinson, who it doesn't matter what the game script is. It doesn't matter how big of a dog they are. This man comes through, and he did it again this week.
Yeah, I mean, Robinson to me, when you're going to get 5 or 6 targets and 20-ish carries, regardless of game script, it's pretty hard to screw it up. And he's just shown time and time again, regardless of matchup, regardless of circumstance, he can kind of, at least not kill you. It doesn't mean he's a must in all lineups by any stretch, but he really does bring that floor. Aaron Jones, I think you kind of know what you're getting in the sense that he's going to be volatile, and his TD equity is hurt because we saw it last week. The Packers had first and goal early, maybe at the 1, and they refused to not let Devontae Adams score. Multiple attempts to him, and then on 4th down, they went right back to Adams, and he finally did score. Aaron Jones is going to lose some of that, but he's so explosive that he has these games where he can break a couple. So obviously in tournaments, I think you have to consider it. To me, Robinson, Kamara, and Eckler are all much safer, though.
So Robinson, Kamara, Eckler, safer than Aaron Jones.
Yes.
Man, what a tier this is, Sal. I love this. James Robinson, Do we have the spread on this game?
Which game?
I have it. Yeah, I have it right now as 7-point underdog for Jacksonville against Tennessee. 7.5 in some spots.
Yep.
7.5 at home. I honestly don't even care about that. Like,
yeah, last week he was like a 10-point underdog.
Right, exactly. And they went to overtime. So, and this is a pretty sexy tier. At Odd Shopper, we have it. They're plus 290 in some spots. All right. And I think they make a game of this once again. They did. It was 33-30 in week 2. Alvin Kamara against Philly at an egregiously low price point, Sal. Austin Eckler against Atlanta at 7,000. Big letdown, but I don't anticipate the same happening again today. From 7K to 7,600, there is just so much potential for monster breakout performances. How do you kind of sift through the weeds here and find which guys make the most sense?
Yeah, so like just to start it, if Drew Brees does play Kamara, I don't care what the ownership is. If it's 30-35%, I'm probably going to be above the field on it in almost any lineup except like small fields, single entry and 3 max. That's like one spot to maybe pivot away, but that's just a disclaimer to start. But everything else in this range will probably come down to ownership after that. Like I'm even fine getting to Aaron Jones. He had the big game last week, but yeah, I do think people will be timid to get to him when you have Kamara, Eckler, Robinson all around him. Aaron Jones earlier this year when he faces Detroit's been terrible all year. Earlier this year, he had his one mega game with like 50 fantasy points. I think Devontae Adams got hurt in the second half and he just ran free in that matchup. And this defense, if anything, is now worse with a lot of injuries and really their linebacker core and secondary, this second unit. So yeah, I'm fine getting Aaron Jones if he's going to come in 7-8% on something like that. So this range will really be dictated by ownership. But I do think that Austin Eckler is going to be probably way too under-owned compared to what his upside is going to be. In that was as worst case scenario as it can possibly get. Still sees 17 opportunities, still sees 11 fantasy points, which is not great, but he was 7,100. Now he gets lowered to 7,000 in a matchup against Atlanta, which is probably a top 3 matchup on the slate, I would say, for running backs at this point. The volume is just going to be there. Kalen Ballage did come back, see 7 attempts. He was actually pretty decent on those attempts as well. Averaged, I think, 5 yards per carry, but I still think that Eckler's in a situation where if they could actually move the ball, get into the red zone, this much volume in the 2 weeks that he's been back, he's going to start scoring touchdowns, and you've been reliant without the touchdowns right now on him. So I think 7K is a very fair price point.
Absolutely. Ben, Travis Duarte in chat says, I never say anyone's locked, but McCaffrey and Aaron Jones are a lock this week. If you have those guys as a lock this week, you're probably going to be very happy with their ownership given what there is around them.
So that's where, I obviously I don't know. It depends on how much you're playing, but like, you don't need to lock players like that because you can get over with a massive share with minimal exposure. Like Aaron Jones and McCaffrey, depending on what other news breaks, if Breeze plays and whatnot, you don't need to allocate. Now, Kamara is a different story. Like if you're saying I want to get massive leverage on Kamara, you might actually have to lock him.
Right.
Because what are you going to do? Take 40% and basically be around the field. So you just have to kind of measure. And that's why ownership is so important. One of the tools that Lofty talked about. Now, if you hit those, you can pay off in a big way. They both have massive upside, but to me, there are safer options than those two on the board.
I agree. And that was kind of my point. Like if you're locking them, you're going to be very thrilled because their ownership is going to be a lot lower than you think. I don't think they're going to be interpreted as a lock by the field. Sal, Carson, I don't know what Antonio Gibson's status is, man. That hurt a lot of people and helped a lot of people too, because McKinnon had 10 receptions. It's showing knee in some spots, but I thought it was his toe. Didn't you see the toe injury originally?
Yeah, I mean, that's what they ruled it. I think Washington's Twitter even said doubtful with the toe or foot, maybe.
I don't know. Yeah, Elliott against Cincinnati. He's playing on a short week. They got the Ravens tonight. Check the Showdown show out, strategy show. Matt Kajeski, former defensive end for the Chicago Bears, Alex Brown, and myself just did all of that, so you can check it out at the YouTubes. But Sal, 6K range, what do you see here?
Yeah, I mean, the 6K range, we'll see what happens with Zeke tonight. It's just really tough with that offensive line. Like, I just went through some of the stuff on Showdown as well. Like, he's playing fine this year in terms of, like, efficiency metrics. He's, like, top 8 right now in evaded tackles. He's top 5 in overall volume and usage. It's just that offensive line. Zach Martin goes down. It's really tough. We'll see what happens there because he will have an actual nice matchup as a favorite. Probably comes in lower owned unless he does something big tonight. It's hard not to say David Montgomery's name. Last week, I took a stance and went more Myles Gaskin, a lot more Myles Gaskin. And I mean, volume-wise, it was the same. Gaskin just doesn't score the touchdowns. Montgomery finds the end zone, but since week 4, since Tariq Cohen got hurt, which was, I think, week 3.5, since he came back, Montgomery, he leads the NFL in routes run for running backs. He's seeing a ton of usage in the passing game right now. He has, I think, 3+ receptions now in what, 5 to 6, I think it's 8 straight games. So yeah, a ton of usage there with the floor now against Houston. Comes in as a slight underdog, but I assume he still picks up ownership in that range. So I'm going to be fine getting to there. After that, I'll go all the way down to the bottom of this range where I don't think Ronald Jones will be owned. You don't really get the passing game usage. He's going to be somebody who comes in with absolutely no ownership against Minnesota. 6-point favorite with a 29 implied team total. That's what we look for running backs. And if the game flow does go his way, probably going to push towards 18 to 20 touches. So I'll go to the bottom and the top with Montgomery in that mid-range, and at the bottom, I'll go to Ronald Jones.
I'm loving Ronald Jones in this spot too, and I think that's a really fair price point. Ben, what do you say at 6K and anything in that mid 5K range that stands out too as we work our way down the position?
Yeah, I'll throw my support behind Montgomery as well. As much as he's an easy target to make fun of, he is playing pretty good and he's got a good matchup. Zeke, I want to see tonight, obviously, but Zach Martin going down is a game changer. This line, without him, they found something when they moved him to right tackle, and that's not going to be the case tonight. The only other guy I want to point out, and I can't figure it out. So Chris Carson against the Eagles got out carried by Carlos Hyde. And obviously that made it a really tough sell last week. Last week against the Giants, though, Carson had 13 carries and he had 6 targets. Carlos Hyde had 2 carries. So if that's what we're going to see at home against the Jets, I mean, you couldn't ask for a better spot. And coming off maybe what we may see if he's going to dominate touches, Chris Carson is another guy that we consider probably direct leverage off someone like Kamara.
Do you like anything in this 5K range, specifically towards the bottom, Ben, where you've got not a ton that stands out? Like the 7K range and 6K, we got a lot of options that we can make sense of and feel pretty decent about. But screw it, let's just talk value here. Anybody in the value spot early in the week look good to you?
I will say that I'm going to continue to mention Wayne Gallman because he just gets his work and he does the most with it. Now, they're playing better, and that's probably helping in positive game scripts. But even if they fall behind here against Arizona, it's a close spread, so I don't think that's a given by any stretch. It's not like he can't catch the ball, and I still expect 15+ carries. So if he's going to keep doing that and they're not going to adjust his price, I'll continue to play some Wayne Gallman and hope that he falls in the end zone. Every time he does that, he's obviously going to return value.
Yeah, as long as Alfred Morris, who had one really great run. I don't know why, but he's in there and he's getting some opportunity. I'm with you, though. I still liked, not Gallman this week, but the week prior to that, I was so worried about the rest of this team. He's still getting the opportunities. And while Morris and Dion Lewis both saw 20% of snaps, Gallman still got 50% this week, Sal, and he carried the ball 16 times. So I don't know, 135 rushing yards against Seattle. There's no reason not to keep feeding him the football with the way he's producing.
Yeah, I like Gallman. You have Devonta Freeman now going, I think, on the COVID list at this point. So it's still his backfield. He's a fine pass catcher. Like historically in his career on a per route run basis, he's up there with not the elites of like your McCaffreys, but he's up there in that next tier of like really good pass catchers, like your Aaron Jones range with Dalvin Cook is becoming in the passing game. So I think he's fine. I think this range right here allows you to do a lot on this slate because after this, you don't have much. Jonathan Taylor, Gallman, Gaskin. You can say Clyde Edwards-Helaire as well to an extent, but those 3 guys are going to allow you to do a lot, whether it's getting up to a Christian McCaffrey and still having money for a slightly expensive stack. I'll go to Gaskin the most here. I thought he was the best overall running back play last week, factoring in everything. You get another 23 opportunities, 23 touches in that game. He's now seen 21 or more opportunities his last 4 healthy games. He had a bunch of running backs out in that game. I just don't think it really matters. So price point comes down now. Not a great team total for him, but I'll take it. You're getting routes run, you're getting passing game usage. And then I will give Jonathan Taylor a nod. We saw the game against the Packers before he ended up going on the COVID list, and you could kind of chalk it up to he had a lot of volume, wasn't all that efficient, broke a couple of tackles, but the Packers defense has been bad. Now you get a very good matchup against Vegas where they're actually favorites with a big implied total. And he's coming off of a game where he saw probably his best passing game usage. He's arguably the best pass catching running back on a per touch basis this year in terms of yards per reception, yards per route run for running backs. And yeah, there's a lot to like for him. 5 evaded tackles was the most he's had in a game this year. All the stuff that you saw in college is what you've seen in these last 2 starts for him. So maybe some life in now his best matchup of the year. I'll take him at 5,800. I'd rank it Gaskin, Taylor, and Gallman in that range, but I like all 3.
And assuming he gets no ownership again, I will mention Kenyon Drake just because if the game is favorable, if the game goes favorable for them, he's going to get the opportunities and the goal line work. Unfortunately, we saw last week or 2 weeks ago against New England, 22 carries in that game. It was competitive from the jump. They lost by 3 points. They fell behind early and often to LA, and it was just really bad. He still got in the end zone, but only 10 carries, averaged 4.9 yards per attempt, and had 3 targets again, which isn't much. But now you consider that he's been targeted 12 times over his last 3 games. That's more than he's been targeted throughout the rest of the season combined. Ran 16 routes, which is more than we'd seen. I'm not particularly high on Drake. I agree that Gaskin, in that spot is very favorable, but who knows? Maybe they fall behind and he gets phased out a bit. He should still be used in the passing game though. But all in all, I think Drake in favorable or neutral game scripts is always a 20 plus touch option. It just, if this team falls behind, he gets phased out, and that's kind of scary. Do you guys have anything else, any discount, dirt cheap options here that make any sense? Either of you?
I think it's obvious if Gibson sits, McKissick's going to be popular.
For sure.
Just because he catches so many passes. But other than that, I don't see much.
Sal?
Yeah, no, nothing for me below. Really just McKissick, nothing else in the 4K.
Okay. Let's talk wide receivers. Guys, hit that thumbs up if you're just joining us. Subscribe if you think we've helped you, or you just like what we do here and you think we're friendly, nice people and you want to help support us. We like that too. Doesn't matter, whatever the reason. Hit that subscribe, hit the notification bell as well. Devontae Adams, Sal, 9,300. He's basically the closest thing there is to a bell cow running back right now. The target share, everything's insane. He's scored a touchdown now in every game since week 7. He has 13 receiving touchdowns in 10 games, crossed the 1,000-yard mark last week. There's not much more you need to say about him. Meanwhile, Tyreek Hill has been one of the biggest. He has 30-plus DraftKings points in 3 of his last 4, 25-plus DraftKings points in 4 of his last 5. Those type of numbers are absurd from him. No one can blow the top off a defense like he can. And then DK Metcalf as well. Those are your highest price guys. All of them are spectacular.
Yeah, exactly. You really can't pick between these guys. I like, and just right now early on, I think Mahomes and Rodgers look like the best quarterbacks. If I end up getting like 15% stacks of each, I assume I'm going to get a lot of their wide receivers, with Tyreek and Adams being the top options. Adams, I think I've had at least 20% of every single week, and there's maybe like 1 or 2 weeks where it doesn't work out in a major way for you. So both those guys are fantastic. I think that DK Metcalf, though, he's had like a run of, honestly, not cornerbacks that give him any real worries, like James Bradbury, a mediocre game, 80 yards, 5 catches. No real issues against Darius Slay or Patrick Peterson to an extent. That game he got a little bit double teamed against the Cardinals, but now he gets the Jets where he's going to face like undrafted free agents, Lamar Jackson, just guys that you have not even heard of. They're playing 3 undrafted free agents in their secondary right now that Derek Carr just took advantage of last week all game. A lot of it in the middle of the field. They have nothing at safety. May is like their best secondary player right now. So I think that DK Metcalf, if you just wanted to say, okay, I want a one-off out of all these guys, I think because of like the ways to stack this up, more people will go to Rodgers, more people will go to Mahomes. I think you're going to get Metcalf. He normally comes in with lower ownership than he should. He's expensive, but this could be another just monster DK game at 8,400. I think if I'm just choosing a one-off, I'd go to him.
I agree. And if his ownership, like you're saying, comes in low because of guys like Hill and Adams and other players like even Keenan Allen at a similar price point in a good matchup, Metcalf is going to be in an absolute smash spot with that ownership. But I'm still speculating. What about you, Ben?
Yeah, I mean, it's hard not to like all of these guys, even Keenan Allen coming off, the Chargers in general are in a huge buy low spot. So I'm going to try to save a running back partly because I'm going to try to get 2 of these guys on some teams. I think it can be done. Obviously, Adams it's $1,600 just in this micro range from Adams to Keenan Allen. I do think that makes a difference, but all very safe. To me, it's Adams and Keenan Allen are quote unquote the safest. Tyreek and Metcalf could have just nuclear games. It's hard to decipher these guys. I'm going to certainly mix and match. I think this is where you really have to be cognizant of ownership and know exactly what you're doing, because full fading any of these guys to me, unless you see something that I don't, seems unnecessary given how good they are and how good the matchups are.
Yeah, absolutely. And you can say that about a lot of guys in this 7K range too. I mean, oh God, Michael Thomas, if Breeze is back, he's been really disappointing this season, even in those couple of games with Breeze at the helm. So you could make an argument for getting away from him. But A.J. Brown, to me, against Jacksonville, my eyes light up because I think he's going to be way, way low owned. Calvin Ridley against the Chargers, these are some spots that are just okay. But Jefferson's been amazing. He's got Tampa Bay, in which could absolutely be a high-scoring game. And you have to scroll all the way down to Julio Jones at 6,600. Terry McLaurin against San Francisco, they got lit up by Alex Smith. So this isn't to say that all these guys are in fantastic spots, but even Allen Robinson, Ben, against Houston in another exploitable position. This is on a 13-game slate, going to make it very tough to really lock on to one or two guys. There's just so many good options.
No doubt. There's a ton. Obviously, some of it will be who do I use at quarterback, what kind of game environments, and news. By the time we get to Sunday, things will become a little clearer. I'd imagine some things will break and whatnot, but there's a lot of guys I think flex being a wide receiver this week seems pretty high. I want as many guys as I can fit in these ranges, and there's just so many that have opportunities given the matchups to really put together ceiling games. But you want to know, going back to the comment earlier in chat about, locking, say, McCaffrey and Aaron Jones, like some of these guys, we're going to need to allocate some serious ownership if we want to get exposure to, over the field. Others, we might only need 10%, 12% to get 2x. And that makes a huge difference, because the more you can do that, the more opportunities you're going to have to get overweight on a lot of these players.
No doubt. Sal, from 6K all the way up to 7,600, or 7,700, it's loaded with more talent.
Oh yeah, it's loaded, and it's guys that we've seen just in these 6K ranges have 30+ point performances rather recently. So I think the guys that I gravitate towards the most, we haven't seen one play tonight. Amari Cooper, tough matchup. I kind of hope he just gets shut down against this Marlon Humphrey, Jimmy Smith secondary. If that's the case, either way, going into this matchup is going to be fantastic against Cincy. Team total's fine at like 24. So Amari, Allen Robinson, and Julio stand out as guys that you can tell me they were 7,500, and I would be like, okay, I'll probably get some of them. So at their price points, their ceilings are massive. And just another example of how you have some cheap running backs in the slate that are going to get volume. You have these alpha stud, borderline top 10 wide receivers in Allen Robinson, and some of them are definitely Julio and Amari in the NFL right now in this cheap price range. It just lends itself to making it easier to get to guys like McCaffrey on the slate. So those are the three guys that I look towards. Just their target shares approaching 25, 30%. Julio, when he's been healthy this year, just coming off of his worst performance, puts up like 6 catches, 95 yards. So I'll take those three guys in this range, and maybe on the entire slate, honestly, at wide receiver that I like the most.
I love it, man. And Julio almost came down with one of the greatest catches of the season. Yep. Did you see that in the end zone?
Yeah, I had a lot of Julio last week, so I was watching very closely.
Yeah. I mean, that was like Odell Beckham part 2 if he made that catch, but he didn't. So we move on. Ben, we can't obviously hit on everyone. That's why we do shows throughout the week. We got the strategy show tomorrow, ownership and stacks. We got a full game-by-game breakdown on Thursday with Matt Savoca, myself, 13 games. That's going to be something. You got the final tune-up. You've got our strategy show. Ben, Sal does all of his content as well. There's many different ways to get it in over here. So I don't want to spend a million minutes on every single guy here, but let's talk about some players under the 6K range and 5K, 4K that stand out, might be some solid options for week 14.
Yeah. So obviously we've already rattled off a ton of guys. I do want to see, I think Godwin's good to go, but if for some reason he sat, Antonio Brown's at 5,500, Minnesota secondary, I think you can attack that. Ayuk looked very impressive last night. He's at 54 going against Washington. Pittman, the Raiders, him and Hilton are there. I think this is where you kind of get into, all right, I love the rest of my lineup. I have this price point and I'm willing to go to these guys rather than being like, all right, I'm going to start with this. I love this guy. These are guys I'm comfortable playing around stacks that I really like, around top end options that I think could just, kind of hold it steady, not ruin the lineup. They're in a decent spot to pay off.
All right. Favorite value for you, Sal? Feel free to jump around the board here. There's so much.
Yeah, Brandon Ayuk's going to be my favorite guy. I mean, 4 straight games of 20+ fantasy points at this point, at least DraftKings wise. I mean, I think this is potentially another one of these rookie studs that are just way too cheap, coming off of a game where they already has salary out. So he'd probably be a little bit more expensive. Washington as a defense in general, as a whole in coverage, has been good. A lot of it's zone though. You saw the Steelers receivers, they were getting open left and right. I mean, they were just dropping 7 passes last night and they had a bunch of receptions each. So I think that I'm going to be going to Brandon Ayuk the most. I'm going to say Allen Lazard yet again, just because of some of these Packers stacks and Allen Lazard's price point right now. I don't think it's changed now for basically 3 straight weeks. He didn't have the greatest game that you were looking for the last time out, but still going to probably be that number 2 option in the passing game for the Packers. So I'll take that just from a stack perspective. And then a bunch of guys who you have some interest in, whether it's Antonio Brown from stacks, Michael Pittman, if you wanted to stack up that game or even as a one-off, but Brandon Ayuk and probably Lazard in that 5K to above range is some of the last names. And then hoping, I mean, Kenny Golladay, hopefully he's healthy, but if he doesn't play again, I probably lean to hope that he's not going to play, because it makes it easier to stack up that team with like at most the price tag of TJ Hawkinson, but then you could really start to pump with guys like Quinn Cephas, who's like 3,200 this week.
Yeah, if you're looking like really cheap, you mentioned Cephas had a pretty solid game. Cam Sims, how about that game from Cam Sims yesterday, though? That was solid, Ben. 5 of 9,
Yep.
5 receptions, 9 targets, 92 yards. He also broke off 2 20-plus yard receptions and was solid after the catch. Of course, he's super cheap. And by the way, make sure if you do play him to play the right Sims, because go ahead. What were you going to say?
This is a problem because there's 2 of them on this team. And I knew of Stevie since he was hurt, comes back. I don't even know who Cam Sims is. So yeah, make sure that you're playing the right one. I believe Cam Sims right now seems to be the one that's trending upward.
Do you like any dirt cheap options here?
I don't know if I need to go that low. I will say, and of course they play tonight, so similar to Amari Cooper, I kind of hope this guy does nothing. Gallup is sub 4K.
Yeah,
and
I like that.
Very explosive. If he's going to get 5 to 7 targets, I can live with that at 3,800. It only takes one with a guy like that against Cincinnati. I'm not, again, am I looking to target him? No, but if he's the type of guy that it only takes one catch to pay it off, you're allowed to pay up for 3 or 4 other top end options around him. And that's pretty appealing.
What do you think about this situation now with DJ Moore on the COVID-19 list and also rehabbing or nursing an ankle injury, while Curtis Samuel's also on the COVID-19 list? He was placed there yesterday. I don't know if these guys are going to be able to play. If they're not, what does that do for the rest of the team?
Well, I would have laid 1,000 to 1 that Brandon Zylstra didn't have a pitcher on DraftKings, but he does. So maybe he's a real player that I just don't know. Because if you look at their wide receiver core, besides Robbie Anderson, there is nobody there. Pharaoh Cooper. This is where, again, this is why it's so important to stay with the channel throughout the week, because I know you'll keep people informed with your shows. If these guys are ruled out, there's going to be massive value that opens up, and that is going to change how you can construct your lineups this week.
Sal, any thoughts on that situation? I know it's early, but that could be a game changer from a lineup construction standpoint.
Yeah, I mean, narrative of the show for me makes me like Christian McCaffrey even more at this point. So
yeah, for sure.
It's tough because I don't think Ian Thomas sees that much of a boost in his role. I think that Pharaoh Cooper is normally a slot receiver, so if he's going to slide into the slot for, I mean, all those guys go into the slot, but let's just say Curtis Samuel, I don't get that excited for an upside play there. Brandon Zylstra, or whatever his name is, looking up, 28 years old, undrafted out of Concordia, has never really done much in college nor the NFL, so don't feel about any major upside there. But who knows? Maybe it could be a Chad Henson situation. But I think what you look for there is just, if you want to stack it or one-offs, Robbie Anderson, but it just makes me like Christian McCaffrey even more at this point.
Oh my God, that would be absurd if all of those guys are out and Christian McCaffrey's at full go. Oh,
well, they were just placed, right? So, I mean, were they just close contacts? Because then there's a chance they can come off in like 2 days.
Yeah, that's the thing. We've seen. It's so weird the way things have worked. So he was placed on. I know Samuel yesterday. And Moore is deemed a close contact, is able to return negative text for 5 consecutive days. He could be eligible to return in time for Sunday's game. So
Gotcha.
the same thing with Curtis Samuel. So it's up in the air. But man, that would be crazy.
Yeah.
All right, guys. Tight ends, and then one defense. Of course, we try not to care much about defenses at all, which is why we only talk about cheap defenses. You want a good example? I'll give you a great example of that. Yesterday, the guy that came in second, I think he still finished second place in the 2-game Millie Maker, had the extra salary. He had the same lineup for. I think that was the one. I'd have to go back and look, but
It was.
at a time he was right behind the guy in first place in the Millie Maker. He had the same lineup, except he had enough salary to get to the Steelers defense over the Bills defense. You know what happened? He didn't win $1 million. The guy that won first left a ton of money on the table, went Bills defense, and didn't worry about getting to the top. Now, I'll be fair. I still had some Pittsburgh defense. I didn't have an issue with that. But it goes to show you that the high-priced defenses, the variance and volatility at the position, anything can happen. All the time, anything can happen. So that's why we will hit on one under 2,800 and see if there's any cheap, dirt down there that we can get to. So, all right, Ben, tight end. You've got Kelsey now. You've got Waller. Unfortunately, no George Kittle. Those are the only two guys at the top.
Yeah, I mean, and before I say that, I appreciate the super chat from Chad supporting the show.
Thanks, Chad.
Obviously, I would love to say, I'm going to go get Travis Kelce, but I don't know how I'm going to do that considering how many top-end guys I like at receiver, how many top-end guys I like at running back. And I think the opportunity cost for tight end, you really need him to have a monster game that outscores all the other tight ends by a significant margin, because if he doesn't, I think the difference in receiver and running back is greater. So you've got those guys, but then you've got guys significantly cheaper. When you look to like the Gesicki, Evan Ingram range, to me, that's probably where I'd start. And then there are even a couple going even further down if you're purely punting tight end.
How about you, Sal?
Yeah, I like, so obviously top end guys, then you kind of get this range of just, Hunter Henry, Evan Ingram, Gesicki seem like the same guys every single week that have some upside. I like Robert Tonyan, but it's been 5 straight weeks of 5 targets. The volume isn't coming up. He's just surviving on touchdowns. So all of them in stacks. The highest overall team total at 31 right now. At this point, you're kind of banking on that touchdown to continue, but the price point hasn't come up. And then I do think you're going to see some ownership towards a lot of these punt guys, because we just saw Jordan Reed. Last play of the night, score a touchdown. We saw the huge game for Logan Thomas. So I think these guys towards the bottom end, nationally televised game, are going to be higher owned probably than they should, but it's hard to get away from them. And then Cole Kmet's probably your punt play at 2,900. Second straight week of basically being the tight end running routes more than Jimmy Graham. This past week was just a full-on tight end, 7 targets from Trubisky. Never did anything insane at college. Like, this was known for he's a rookie. For people that don't know, this was known as a year of just not that many great tight ends. Like, arguably Jay Sternberger last year would have been the best tight end in this draft, and he hasn't done much for the Packers. So I do think that Cole Kmet would be like the one punt player you're looking for in a good matchup against Houston.
Robert Tonyan is tied with Kelsey for the most touchdowns at the tight end position this season, and he has scored in 3 consecutive games. Sure, that 3 touchdown game didn't hurt him, but the opportunity for him to score is going to be there. 4,200 against Detroit. I don't have an issue with that. I think ultimately, once you get down to the cheap options, you're probably not going to have the same Anthony Ferkser opportunity as we did last week, but Ben, we do need to, and Sal just hit on some of them, talk about the cheap range here a couple more times. Dalton Schultz is actually running some of the most routes at his position in the league, being targeted one of the most in the league. Of course, it's a little bit skewed from what we saw earlier in the year with them playing from behind and having Dak Prescott. But while the production hasn't necessarily materialized, he's getting the targets. And Logan Thomas coming off a huge game, career game yesterday. There are a few guys down here that we can at least talk about.
Yeah, it's not bad. Obviously, you're just not going to find massive target share or safety in these ranges. But those guys, I'll stick with Notre Dame tight ends. Tyler Eifert is someone, when he was on the Bengals, I always said, man, if he could just stay healthy. Now he's on the Jaguars, and he's not knocking any doors down, but 5 straight games with 4 more targets, coming off a 6 for 45. Honestly, when you're 3,100, that can get it done even without a touchdown. That's a game that, Luffy, you've talked about, maybe could get back and forth with Tennessee. So if you want a weird one-off, I may look to Tyler Eifert, who's a guy I've always kind of had a soft spot for.
All right. Sal, anything else at the position? Anything else at the position, Sal? Tyler
Eifert stunned him.
I got no sound right now. I don't know if you're coming to me.
Oh man, I was going to do a bit with this. Okay. No sound for Sal. That's okay. I guess
we got sound now. It just
we're back in action. All right.
That was weird. Everything went mute. I thought my ears turned off.
Yeah, I wasn't sure if you just went into dreamland for a minute and we were waiting for you to come back to earth.
Well, no, I didn't know when to interject in because I didn't know if you were calling me, and I was like, all right, time has passed enough to where they're probably saying my name because I had to snap my finger. I was like, is that me? Am I deaf now?
I said, do you have anything else at tight end, or should we wrap this one up?
Yeah, no, that's basically it. I do think that you can see a massive performance out of Tonyan if you get more volume. It's easy to say, he's just going to keep getting 5 targets. If he doesn't get in the end zone, he's going to be a bust. But he leads the slate for tight ends and catch percentage, and he's massively, massively the leader in separation. So this guy's getting open. If you get an 8 target week, he can definitely get you there. That's where the upside is. So I think he's probably my favorite mid-range option.
Awesome. Hey, the NFL Showdown rankings are free at awesemo.com today. What do you say? Free, completely free. Go over to awesemo.com, NFL Showdown rankings. Check them out. And remember, check that giveaway out at awesemo_com. Follow all of us while you're at it. It's the greatest decision you'll ever make. All right, defenses, let's go. And thanks to Jordan Klein producing the show. This man puts in the hours every day. No love, and you don't hear much about him. But Jordan behind the glass, like, I don't know, sometimes it feels like Ben 10 hours a day. It's insane.
Oh yeah, every time I'm here, he's there. So and he's doing a ton. So it's good to have him back. He took a little break and now back in this. But I will say, you and Luffy, we passed him the college basketball and college football winners to offset that. So
that's true. Mostly you for college, and I'll get in on the NBA action in the NFL. But yeah, I mean, 4 hours sitting down, Jordan, on that strategy show. I talk for an hour and a half, and that's enough as it is. So, yeah, respect, brother. Respect. Show some love to our boy Jordan. Below's 2,800. Sal, I'll go to you first. There's a lot below 2,800 this week.
Yeah, there really is. And I'll probably end up I'm going to go to the Giants right now at 2,600. A lot of the guys in the bottom end, I like to go to these cheap defenses. I'll probably have some, but a lot of 30 implied totals against those teams. So I'll end up going to the Giants here. Kyler, we do think, not rushing as much, the shoulder, there might be something wrong there. Had a decent performance last game, but Giants defense coming on right now. I'll go there at 2,600.
They certainly are. What about you, Ben?
I'll go to Denver. And part of it's contingent. If all those guys are sitting, I think it could be a tough situation for Teddy Bridgewater. They're coming off some games where they're showing more pressure. They had 6 sacks against Miami, 3 against New Orleans. They weren't great against Kansas City, but they did hold them to 22 points. I think that could be a spot at 2,500 to attack.
I like it. I was going to go with Denver as well, but kind of with the contingency that some of those guys were out. I think I got to go with Arizona here. And the reason for this is I like the Giants defense too, but I could see this just being an ugly game. And I'm not going to pretend that I'm convinced Colt McCoy or Daniel Jones, either of those guys, aren't turnover prone. So yes, maybe they'll look to keep it out of their hands with Wayne Gallman and Alfred Morris, but at the same time, there's a lot of opportunity there to get somebody to get some turnovers and create maybe a defensive touchdown. And San Francisco, they continue to get healthier. Last week was brutal, or yesterday was just absolutely brutal. But as they continue to improve and get healthy on the defensive end, they've had some pretty decent games recently. At 2,700 against Washington, I'm all right with that as well, especially if Antonio Gibson sits out. All right, final thoughts, Ben. Anything to close us out?
No, I think this is a week where we have some top end plays at each position, and it's just going to depend how much reasonable value opens up. The more that opens up, the more opportunities you're going to have to get 3 or 4 of those guys in. And as the news breaks, that picture will become clear as we get to Sunday.
Anything else, Sal, after we close this first look out? It's fun to look at a slate like this early in the week and see how much changes, but kind of get the first glance of how things are going to shape up and what the opinions are going to be throughout the week.
Yeah, last week was a week where there wasn't like standout quarterbacks and you had the cheap guys come through. I think this week's going to be the opposite with more games and more elite quarterbacks on the slate. I like Mahomes and Rodgers a lot, and I've said it, I like McCaffrey a lot. Those guys are all really expensive, so trying to piece together the rest of that is going to be pretty interesting.
Thanks for hanging out as always, guys. Before you head out, hit that thumbs up and the subscribe, and be sure to check around throughout the day. Plenty more content coming up. Live Before Lock, an hour and a half stream going up to this weird Tuesday night game between the Ravens and Cowboys. And be sure to check out the strategy show that we already did. Ben, no golf, no nothing happening right now?
So there's some European golf, which we'll have a little content out. I will say I put out a daily prop of the day. If you're looking to get down some action maybe outside of DFS, check that out over on Awesemo Odds. We have a ton of content on the betting side as well for these standalone games.
Good stuff. Guys, thanks. We'll see you back here soon. Tomorrow's strategy show. It's ownership and top stacks taking a first look. We'll see you soon.